Most athletes think training harder automatically makes them better. But here's the truth. Without the right mechanics, strength, and progression, you're just guessing. Today, we're giving you the cheat code to automatically get faster, stronger, and more explosive. Welcome to the Cheat Code Podcast, where we break down the science and systems to give athletes an edge. I'm Jessa, and today I'm joined by Albert, sports performance coach and the owner of the Yard Central Coast, and Nick, athletic performance coach and owner of the Peak Performance. Here's what we're unlocking today. Speed and acceleration, speed development for multi-sport athletes, sprint mechanics, acceleration versus max velocity, sprint resisted training, such as sleds, bands, and hills, force, velocity profiling in athletes, and a controversial topic. Should young athletes specialize early or play multiple sports? First, we will be discussing speed development for multi-sport athletes. Albert and Nick, how would you approach this?
So one of the main things with multi-sport athletes and sprint development is getting them not only good at just overall top speed, but also really just emphasizing the acceleration portion, because that's where most athletes are going to live within their sports. One of the things that I try to work from now, like especially just mainly working with athletes, is this concept of I'm not moving from a standstill position, right? And like this is the thing is like when I'm training speed specifically, yes, I want them in a set position. We're going to kind of be track style in the way we approach things. But that's just if like, say I'm working a specific thing like top speed that day, right? Because we have to test the whatever the quality is we're trying to achieve. But for the most part, no athlete's going to start from that set position, you know? So like, that's kind of the thing there. Now, for me, the only kind of like caveat I have with this in like the online space is we start getting out of some really weird positions. And then it's like, am I really practicing what's realistic in the sport, or am I just getting good at coming out of these weird positions, you know? And that's where I kind of like lose it a little bit with the training and the online stuff. It's like, I'll come out of like maybe a running start or maybe a cut or something, or a shuffle, or yeah. But it's like, I'm not going to do the whole push-up thing necessarily and all that. It's like, I think most people generally can get off the ground fairly well, you know? So it's like, at what point do I like really train the speed, or am I just kind of adding in this kind of circus act to kind of convince people I'm doing something more, you know?
Yeah, the body, like you don't need to train the exact thing that's going to happen in your sport to get better at a certain aspect. Like your body doesn't work that way. Like, so when there's overlay, there's transfer that happens, right? That's why a squat can improve vertical jump, but you're not doing an actual vertical jump. It's so similar in improving certain qualities, but it's not actually, it doesn't need to be exactly the same mimic of what you're doing. That's like doing a dumbbell. Like boxers do this shit all the time, where it's like, I have a 2-pound dumbbell in my hand and I'm throwing punches thinking it's gonna make me more powerful. It's like, well, that's not really what's gonna actually improve your power overall. It's like too much specificity when your body isn't stupid, right? Like if you train things that are across the spectrum, your body knows how to link it together, and it's the practice that you're doing in the sport that's gonna help you link it together, right? So I think what you're saying is like, we're going to get you good at a couple of different positions that you might experience to improve some like overall coordination, right? Like how to adjust your body on the fly and get out. But you don't need to do a false slip, plant the hand on the ground and then sprint from it, right? That's going to happen maybe one time out of every 1,000 times that happens. And with your training, you're saying like you should be well coordinated enough to make that happen on their own. I think is what we're kind of getting at.
And I think too, like the chaos that we try to, you know, emulate sometimes in training, that's going to happen in practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're having good practices, in the training space, I don't necessarily need to train that, you know, like maybe some very specific positions they're always in, sure. But it's like, generally speaking, they're going to get those exposures through practice and play itself, you know? And that's where the training kind of meets the actual play. And it's like, am I training still, or am I starting to just play now, you know? And then that's where I'm like, am I actually trying to get this athlete better, or am I filling the training block with things that seem and look cool, but necessarily I don't really need, or we're not gaining much benefit from?
Yeah, if your training isn't transferring, you need to practice your sport more.
100%. 1000%.
But in terms of multi-sport athletes, I think what can be challenging is there's no dedicated off time, right? So with a typical 1, maybe 2 sport athlete, or you have a dedicated off time to where you can really focus on certain qualities, right? Like, okay, say this 4 to 6 week block of the off season, we're really going to hammer in acceleration. We're going to improve acceleration technique, dry phase technique. Work, I don't know, lower body power a little bit more in the gym. And then we're going to transition a little bit more to like speed or whatever, right? With multi-sport athletes in the high school range, at least what I've found is that it's challenging to get those dedicated periods. So you have to get a little creative and smart with how you're chasing these adaptations, with practices pretty much happening throughout the year. Like you're almost having to microdose some of this, like increase frequency, decrease overall volume, and get the most you can out of it when it comes to like that aspect. And I'm sure like they're not recovering a lot, so you got to get a little creative for true top speed training.
100%.
With that aspect for it. So
Yeah, totally.
So I have a question for you too. So parents hear the word sprint mechanics a lot. Can you explain in plain language like what that means for their kid?
I want to take that one. Yeah. So I think parents get a little wrapped up in these, this is Usain Bolt sprint mechanics, I need to be exactly like that. Well, every athlete is going to be a little bit different. And even at the highest levels of sprinting, there are differences, right? Like some athletes have like wider hips versus narrow hips. Some use their arm swing to be a little bit more rotational. Some have a little bit wider step stance with externally rotated feet. Some are more narrow. Those narrow base hips, they can bring the foot up and through very clearly and easily. So I want parents to understand that each athlete is going to be a little bit different. There are a few core things that we're typically looking for that can help improve some overall sprint mechanics, but it's not my job or Albert's job to change the physiology of the athlete and to make them into one perfect mold, okay? Because when you do that, you take away their natural given body anthropometrics, strength, power, whatever it is. Like they have learned how to run through trial and error and growing up to run fast in that regards, right?
Yes.
So you don't want to change too much. You don't want to overcoach, right? So I can give myself for an example. I'm like more of a strength and power, force dominant type of athlete. So I typically have a little bit better of an acceleration, okay? But my top speed typically decreases, like isn't as good as I would hope it to be. But my natural arm swing is gonna be a little bit wider. I have a wider, broader chest. So for me to go like this with perfect arm mechanics, I'm hitting my lats every time, and what that's gonna do is gonna take away my full power to drive the elbow back, right? So there are differences that I think you need to be looking at for each of the athletes, and hopefully your coach can understand that and just doesn't follow this is the model, right? Because each one's gonna be a little bit different, but I think we can dive into some of those like few key aspects that typically, at least for me, I'm like, if we can change these 2 to 3 things, like the athlete's gonna improve their speed, especially in the acceleration stuff, like really, really quickly. So I don't know if you want to talk about a few of those and then I can chime in and we can go through it.
Yeah, and just kind of to piggyback off of what Nick says, like as training in like specifically with speed, yes, we're gonna work on maybe those initial steps, right? We're gonna work on the spacing with their stride a little bit. We're gonna work on strengthening those hips so maybe they can get a little more space from that drive. But at the end of the day, it's like kind of like Nick says, I'll have people come in and they'll want their kids to run this rigid thing and they don't want any rotation happening. And it's like, now we're putting this kid in this box where now he can't run. It's like, I need the kid to run, focus on just running. And then we can create, different drills or whatever to put them in positions to get what we're gathering or want to gather from them, right? So like big things that like I say I'll like focus on initially and why we like do like sleds here, right? Is it's going to get them in that forward leaning posture. So like during the drive phase, during acceleration, we want to be in that forward leaning posture. You'll see a lot of kids stand up. Now here's the caveat with all that is that depending on the amount of force that kid can even produce is going to determine the angle that he's going to come out in, or she is going to come out in regardless. So like if you go online, they want you forward leaning, all that stuff. But it's like, if this kid isn't powerful or isn't strong in those positions, I'm not going to be able to get them there right away.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to maintain a 45 degree. They're going to be more 65, 70.
So like we use like, say, the sled, right? And that puts them in what we call that peak force velocity, which is kind of like that roughly 45-degree angle. And that's that sled and that weight, that counterbalance is going to keep them in that angle. So I could train them in that position longer. So yeah, maybe that day we don't get it. But over time of using that sled and them running naturally, what occurs with them, they're now going to start to get into that position because that's what's most advantageous with that sled.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not going to spend 30 minutes with them that one day just to be like, we got to hammer this out now, you know, and force them into that.
Even with like my athletes, like a baseball kid I'm working with right now, like I've tried to be like, okay, like stay lower, like run lower. You can't, like you can't do it. It's something that they can't do. It's something that happens as a byproduct of, like you said, repetition, getting stronger, and being able to produce more force. So they're able to cycle their legs faster. They can stay lower, and that just takes time through with, you know, strength training, power training, sprint training. But it's not like I'm going like, okay, putting a pole up and saying run underneath this, because then they're going to be bent over running like that. And it's not. And we're trying to keep straight angles, right? Like with through their torso and shin angles matching, right? So I think to give like a context of some of the things we may be looking at, right? One is like arm mechanics, right? Really with arm mechanics, I want to see aggressive, like powerful movement of the shoulders. So not a lot, but some athletes will stay in bicep like dominant. They're doing little curls, right? Where what we're looking for to create torque, create power, to create some counterbalance too with running is we want big aggressive arm swing. It doesn't need to be locked at 90. It doesn't, you know, all that sort of stuff. That's mainly what we're looking for in terms of arm mechanics. What I think Albert was mentioning is that we're looking for matching shin and torso angles, right, coming out of the drive phase, which the drive phase is just the initial acceleration, like 0 to 10, 12 yards, right? So arm action, torso angle, and then each of the different portions of the phases or sprint mechanics, like drive phase, transition, top speed, there's a little bit different of like the foot positioning and cycling that we're looking for. So in terms of drive phase mechanics, one thing that I think me and Albert both harp on is called a negative step, okay? So a lot of athletes, when they're, you know, they've been told stride length versus stride frequency, right? Like a lot of parents might know that as well. Faster stride or more stride length at a greater stride frequency, running faster. But I think one thing that athletes tend to do is they hear stride length and they tend to try to reach, right? They try to reach in front of themselves with their foot. So that means their foot's hitting in front of their hip during a drive, during that initial acceleration coming out. What that does is it creates a braking force that and it might be only a millisecond or two,
Right.
but it's a braking force that then you have to wait for your body to travel over that to get over that center of mass and then push again. So you're creating these two opposite forces, right? So what a negative step is that we're trying to hit just slightly behind the hip, right, as much as we can. Again, this takes practice and time, but what that allows the athlete to do is to just accelerate with their foot mechanics. I think if an athlete can get the negative step, they're going to shave a substantial amount of time off their acceleration right off the bat, you know?
And so people know negative steps. So if I'm standing straight up, you have a side profile of me, we draw a straight line down from my head through my hips. When I go to step and make contact with that ground, I want to be making that step directly underneath that hip or behind the hip. And the thing with the negative step is this is the initial drive phase. This is literally happening within the first 2 to 3 steps. So after that, if we don't get that, that's not going to happen, right? And this is a good thing by like why we use sleds here. Like I was telling one of my coaches last night, like honestly, we don't have enough time with kids to really just focus on sleds. So the sled for me is a training tool, right? If I have weight on you and I'm pulling you back, you're not going to step out in front because now you just have something that's stopping you out in front, hence the braking force, right? So if I'm pulling you from behind, now all of a sudden you're going to get those shoulders out and you're attacking back, right? So like that's why we kind of use the sleds here. One of the other things we talk about is like the spacing with our strides. So we'll use like cone drills here, for instance, where we'll space out these cones and we'll tell the kids, okay, we have 5 cones here for our first initial steps. I want you to think of this as a shoulder race, right? So your shoulders are going to lead your way, right? Or other people will say chase the shoulders, right? And I just want you to be smooth off the ground. I don't even want you to be fast. Just be smooth and quick with those interactions. And naturally, over time, they're going to start to understand these concepts without me telling them, hey, I need your shoulders down in front of you the whole time, all this stuff, right? And it just happens through just, not trial and error necessarily, but just repetitions, right? But again, when I have some of these dads popping out, they'll be telling their kids their arm mechanics, all these other things. And I'm like, I'll even have to tell my dad that helps him. I'm like, Dad, just let them do it. They will figure it out. That's why these drills are here. Just let them go after it and it will happen, But like even like the thing with like when we get into our top speed mechanics where our strides now is our frequency is picking up, and we talk about opening up that stride a little bit. Like my dad last night was showing a drill we used to do. And I'm personally not a big fan of these, even though they're still very popular in the track and field space, is like B skips, where it's this drive up, reach, and then attack down, right? And one of the main things we have issues with sprinters is hamstrings, right? And that's why braking forces, overextending that stride is bad, because during sprinting, the hamstrings are experiencing more stress than they ever do, except outside of deceleration, like a hard cut.
It's like 7 to 8 times body weight.
Yes, it's extremely a lot. So as somebody that's managing somebody that's sprinting, that's always on my mind, being an athlete that slightly tore both my hamstrings. So I'm like, like these types of like instructions and like things like let's avoid these and focus on the things that really matter. Like, okay, I need you moving fast. I need you moving free, right? And I need you as relaxed as possible. So I don't want to fill your brain with all these things to think about while you're trying to run as fast as you can, because sprinting is about letting go. And the more I put in that athlete's mind, the less they're going to be able to do.
It's just a neural output, right?
Exactly.
The more you're processing up here, the less you can send to the body to react fast.
Now, just to gather that all up, the main things we talk about is arm mechanics. Personally, I don't put a bunch of emphasis in the arm mechanics. I give them the general thing, and then I let them kind of figure that out, right? Like if they want to go open hand, closed fist, don't really matter to me. Just understand we don't want you creating too much stress in those. And then it's like big swing back, right? And then we're talking about, okay, I need you to be able to drive your leg up a decent amount. Most of that's going to be done through training. I'm not really going to talk about that too much with them. Next is drive phase. So we're talking about step frequency, how far we're getting out with our strides. We're not, like I say, happy feeding out of that acceleration, trying to get into top speed mechanics too soon, and just being patient with the sprint. Now, to connect this with everything, and then we can move forward after this, understanding we're talking from a track sense. If you're on the football field, the soccer, the pitch, whatever, you're not going to have perfect acceleration mechanics because you're running around athletes, right? So at that end of the day, this is all great to talk about. This is great from a training standpoint. But when we talk about what athletes do in the real field of play, they are two different things. So it's like, I'll tell my football guys at St. Joe's, I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, understand the things we talk about for this is specifically to get you faster. In the game, I don't want you thinking about these things. I want you to just play the game. Like, do not think about like, oh, my stride was a little short on my get off for my, my post route or whatever. Like, do not worry about these things,
I know. I had someone in my comments the other day. I posted like a rugby clip of me making a tackle, and he's like, why did you drag your toe with your left foot? I'm like, bro, I'm fucking one step taking a dive to make this tackle. Like, I'm not thinking about what's going on, Like,
Okay, guys, I have one question for y'all. It's a controversial topic, but multi-sport versus early specialization. What do you believe builds a better athlete?
do we want to look at the numbers, or what do we to it. Because, I mean, look, I think parents get wrapped into this, especially in baseball, like the year round, got to play baseball, got to do this, or if it's golf, early specialization, if it's tennis, early specialization. Like, thankfully for football and some of these other like bigger sports, like they don't really happen until later on, so you kind of have to play multiple sports. But I mean, if you just look at the numbers, I don't know exactly, but you can look this up. It's like, if you look at the amount of professional athletes that were multi-sport athletes in high school, it is far greater than the ones that were in just a single sport.
Right.
Unless you're those niche type of sports, I think like tennis or something like that, where a lot of athletes go pro really early on, like 16 years old. Like, yeah, you might need to specialize a little bit earlier for that aspect. But in general, I mean, I could dive into this a little bit further, but I'm gonna let you go right now. So, oh, you want me to go?
No, like the main thing I'm just gonna say is just like, for me, I don't think it's beneficial at all. I think you could totally train specific skills. So like if you're, I like to label that as like high skill, general skill, right? Football is a general skill sport, sprinting, jumping, cutting, right? But when we're thinking about a high skill, like throwing a baseball, pitching a softball, hitting a tennis ball, like more of a specific skill, like you could train those skills year round and you don't have to play in a game.
Yeah.
Like you can still swing your bat year round and go play basketball, go play football, because this is going to make a more robust athlete. This is going to put you in different positions versus a pure left turn like you do for baseball and softball all day. You know, like you don't need necessarily to play baseball year round to be the best baseball player, you know? And
well, then you get into overuse injuries too. Like I threw the ball every single day for 365 days and I wonder why you're having Tommy John surgery at 17.
And then you even look at most of the major leaguer, like professional pitchers, most of them didn't even start really pitching until later on. And yet you hear these parents, these coaches, and my favorite, high school coaches that want you only to play the one sport they're coaching. And so yeah, like the thing is when we have these coaches, specifically like high school coaches, telling these kids they only need to play one sport while they're in high school. It's like, let's be real about the recruiting process, because this is where it really bugs me. Just out even inside of like the neurological stuff and everything, it's like, one, kids are not getting recruited out of high school ball unless you're literally at the top school in the nation and you're in the top league in the nation.
You're talking about baseball?
Any sport.
Oh, any sport.
Any sport. Like, you're not getting recruited out of high school. You are getting recruited by going to a camp, by going to a showcase and being one of the best athletes there and creating conversations there. Or you do play in the off season, like say travel ball, and you're playing against high level competition, because that's what they want to see you against. I don't want to see you against kids on the Central Coast that, you know, after one or two teams, it's a major drop off. Like, oh, cool, you had 500 yards against a team that, you know, St. Anne's of the Blind over here, you know, like that's not where we're getting recruited. And if we're really genuinely doing what's best for the athletes long term, then I understand that I am just a simple piece in the cog kind of deal, you know, like I'm helping a simple aspect. I don't need to take this kid's childhood from them, enjoying other sports, making friendships and all these things outside of just the physical qualities they will miss out on, you know, by not playing these multiple sports. It kind of bugs me, you know, like, but
yeah. And then especially if we're talking about like youth athletes that are still developing, right? So if you're doing early specialization, the simplest way I can explain this is think of, I would say, from like 5 to like 10 years old, maybe 12, 13. You're trying to build the biggest base possible of a pyramid, right? And the only way you're gonna build that base as wide as possible so you can build the tallest pyramid possible, which is your performance at the highest level, the elites, like professional level, is if you expose yourself and expose the kid to multiple different types of movements, multiple different types of environments, multiple different types of sports, right? Where they're having to develop the neuromuscular, right, brain to muscle coordination, okay? You're exposing them to a wide variety. So don't think of it as like, oh, I'm just gonna get my kid really good at this sport with a swing or a throw or whatever, right? But instead think, I'm building the biggest, best possible like car of all time, right? So you're instead of, you know, going in and trying to play a professional ball with a, you know, like a V or a 6-cylinder, you're building an 8-cylinder, which now if you support that later in life with more skill and then some of that specialization early on, you have a greater capacity to have a higher potential. That's probably the easiest way I think I can explain this for athletes or parents as well, is that when you take away that breadth of development, you're almost shooting your kid in the foot to be one of the best athletes they could be, because they don't have that exposure to multiple environments and in different types of movement patterns.
Right. And I've talked a little bit about this in a post in the past. And the thing is, another way to kind of look at this too is that athletes are complex problem solvers on the go, right? And what Nick's talking about is we're building these pathways so these kids, when they're put in these chaotic environments, they have the creativity and exposure to make a decision so that they can make a better play in that. That's where you see these athletes make these freak plays and you're like, how did they do that? And they're like, I just did it. Because they've been playing all these sports, pickup games, playing spike ball, playing football, all the different sports and things possible. So when it came to that time and they're in that weird position, they just had it in them to be like, I'm going to do this, and boom, they break out of it, right?
That's like that freak athletic play.
Yes,
happens.
100%. And it's from kids playing. And, you know, and this is the issue with the specialization on all this hyper instruction, is that the kids have now lost creativity, right? They're always looking to me for the answer. And it's like, bro, you're playing now. I'm not here. You go do your thing, and we could talk about this after the fact, right? I need you to go play and have fun and just be responsive to your environment. That's the key to being quick. That's the key to being explosive. That's the key to being that athlete, right? It's not about necessarily I've practiced this 50 million times. It's just like I've just had these exposures over time where now I can make this play without thinking about it.
Yeah, like I wrestled in high school. Do you know how many times that helped me in football, rugby, everything else in my life? Put me in awkward ass positions.
Right. And you understand how to,
I know body leverage, right?
I'm a little guy. I was throwing linemen because I knew how to maneuver people's bodies. It wasn't because I was bigger and stronger than them necessarily. It was just because I knew how to use their own weight against them for the same things.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that in football. No, you'll get it in wrestling. No.
Okay, wow. Thank you very much, you two. So, parents and athletes, we want to hear from you. Comment or DM us your take, because this is shaping the next generation of athletes. Huge thank you to Albert from The Yard and Nick from Peak Performance. This is a Cheat Code Podcast, your inside look on training the right way. If you're a parent, athlete, or coach, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And stay tuned for the next episode.